That's the bongs. So, still going. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Standards Committee. So, have we got any apologies for absence? Oh, sorry. Oh, the thing, have I? Do I need to read this first? Right, I'm out of practice. So, members and officers, please remember to switch microphones on and speak directly into the microphone and switch off again after speaking. This meeting is being live streamed to the public, and a recording of the meeting will be available on the Council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. Right, and also remember to silence your phones. Now, any apologies for absence?
None, Chair.
Councillor Begum may be late or may have to give apologies. Right. So, minutes. So we've got minutes from the 21st of March. Has anyone got any comments or amendments? None? We happy to sign off those minutes as an accurate record? Yes. Okay. And we've also got minutes from the 21st of May. They're quite short, so okay, great, happy to sign off. Perfect. So we move on to section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act. So those items on the agenda affected by section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act will be identified at the meeting. Any members so affected are reminded that he or she should disclose the fact and refrain from voting on those items. Have we got any disclosures of interest?
None that I'm aware of, Chair.
Nope. Okay, so any urgent business?
Again, none, Chair.
Thank you. Right, so on reports, we're on the Chair's annual report, and Mark's going to introduce it.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is the customary annual report of the work of the committee for the municipal year 2023-24. It covers a range of matters, including, in accordance with your instruction at your last meeting, the record of attendance for members for that municipal year, the record of training, which I would remind members that 23-24 was the first year of the latest administration, and therefore there is still plenty of time for members to take the training courses. There are a few gaps at the moment, but that may be because some members who continue to serve on the council took training in the latter part of their previous period of service. It also includes information on complaints against members. I'm pleased to say that there were only 4 complaints against members, and that of those 2 were resolved informally, which is always nice. The other one of the others was actually not capable of being taken forward because the councillor was not acting as a councillor at in relation to the matter complained of, and the last one went through the formal process, and the outcome of the local adjudication panel was reported to full council in accordance with their instructions. And I'm pleased to inform the committee, as I was instructed to do so by the local adjudication panel, that the member concerned took the additional training that the local assessment panel, local adjudication panel recommended that he should. The records of training and attendance have been circulated to all members of the council in advance of them being published, which I'm pleased to say is an innovation for this year, and hopefully means that the information that's now before you is more reliable than it has been previously. The records of attendance are now taken directly from the CMIS committee management system, which reduces the amount of risk of error in transposition and so on and so forth. So I am pleased to commend the report to you for onward transmission to full council at its meeting now to be held on the 15th of October 2024.
Thank you very much, Mark, as am I. So can I open the floor to questions? Okay, David Franks first.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, just two quick questions, simple ones really. Since the report was written, the 24th of September council meeting, of course, has been shifted to the 15th of October. So are we to expect that this report will go to the 15th of October?
Yes, indeed, Chair.
And the other question then relates to members' training. I've been around a long time and I've been on a lot of training, but I recognise the need to refresh training, and particularly for things like Development Management Committee, which I've served on for some time. If you asked me when I last went on a Development Management Committee training course, I couldn't tell you because I can't remember. Is there any way members can be given a nudge when they're about to become overdue, particularly for statutory training?
I should think that would be entirely possible, Chair, and I will raise it with the Business and Member Support Services Manager.
Thank you, that would be helpful. I don't think any of us are actually trying deliberately to avoid, but it's hard to remember what you've done and exactly when you did it. Could I make a comment, please? Do you want to deal with that? Yeah, thank you very much. It refers to paragraph 14 and the complaint that was upheld by the adjudication panel, and my comment relates to the debate that took place at full council when the decision was reported. It is my view that Councillor Mahmood Hussain made the most disgraceful comment that I have ever heard in my 42 years as a member of this council, when he said during that debate that members telling lies at council meetings is a trivial matter. I think that is a dreadful thing to say. It's the worst comment I've heard from a councillor ever, and I think he should be thoroughly ashamed of having said it.
Okay. Does Mark have any comments on that?
No, Chair.
No. Okay. Shall we move on? Any other questions or comments on the report? Paula, go ahead.
Yep, just paragraph 19. I think there's a word missing. It says, cannot close the report without thanking the independent members of the committee, the independent persons, democratic services and the monitoring.
You are correct.
Officer.
I had already pointed that out to Mark, so it will be amended for the final report. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the report itself? No? Okay. So, let me just go... So, our committee is recommended to approve the Chair's report for this municipal year to go to full council now on the 15th of October. Are we happy to approve the report? I think that is nods all round. Okay, lovely. Let's move on. So the next item of business is the whistleblowing report. Right, operation of the whistleblowing report. So Mark, go ahead.
Thank you again, Chair. This is again a customary annual report on the operation of the Council's whistleblowing policy. 3 complaints were received during the 2023-24 municipal year. One relating to the alleged misuse by an employee of a blue badge, one relating to a social care provider, and one to alleged irregular recruitment practices within the council. One of the complaints was received anonymously, the other two wish to retain their anonymity. As it turned out, the complaint about the misuse of the blue badge, the person involved was not an employee, and so therefore this was recategorised as a service complaint and dealt with in the usual way and closed to whistleblowing. The complaint concerning the alleged irregular recruitment practices was thoroughly investigated by the director of the corporate director of the department involved and was not upheld. It was found that the recruitment practices were not irregular in the way that they have been described in the complaint and in fact were in accordance with council policy. And the complaint relating to a social care provider was made very late in the municipal year and is still under investigation. It was already a matter that the safeguarding adults team were aware of. Under the relevant paragraph of the council's constitution, I am responsible for reporting on the whistleblowing policy, not only to this committee but also to Audit and Governance Committee, which I did on the 11th of July 2024. And the role of Audit and Governance Committee is to consider whether or not they believe the policy to be operating effectively. They concluded that they did believe that was the case, and therefore they've made no recommendations to you for any changes to the policy this year. Thank you, Chair.
So, can I take any questions on the report? Okay, go ahead, Mr. James.
It just strikes me as odd that what is a fairly simple area, the whistleblowing policy, is handled by two committees. Going back into the mists of time, I seem to recall that it was the Standards Committee alone that handled it. At some point the Audit and Governance, and I've got no problem with that at all, have taken on responsibility for it. But it seems that in terms of developing it, we would be asked to look at it in detail, which the Audit and Governance Committee seems not constitutionally to be responsible for. I find the arrangement odd that that this area of policy crosses two committees, and perhaps it needs to be one or the other. I'm not saying they're likely to be in conflict, although technically they could be, but it just seems rather odd. Anybody got an explanation? First of all, when that happened and why?
I can't tell you when it happened, I'm afraid. It was certainly long before my time as your monitoring officer. I think the reason for the interest of Audit and Governance Committee is in relation to the risk element that there is in whistleblowing. And I know that Audit and Governance Committee take a very careful and close look at the sort of risks facing the council. But I do agree that it does seem to be a rather convoluted method of going around it, and perhaps would bear some consideration when we next review the Constitution.
Councillor Franks.
There's an interesting question that John Jones has raised there, because it was going through my mind whether Audit and Governance was the appropriate committee if it needs to go to another committee, or whether it should be Admin and Regulation Committee. But I don't personally have a problem with it being reported elsewhere as well as here, but I would like it still to continue to come to this committee if that's possible.
Yes, I agree. I'd still like it to come here, if possible. Any further questions or comments on the whistleblowing report?
Thank you. Not on the report. I've just got a question about the revised policy. Is that now or next?
I don't think we're revising the policy. It's just a report on how it's operating. But if you would like to ask a question about the policy, feel free.
Thank you. It's in section 6, the untrue and or vexatious allegations. I think the policy, my view on the policy is that it's very strong. It's very clear about wanting people to put forward and raise concerns and reports. But for section 6, this is clearly more of an observation, really. Is there any consideration around, in the situation where someone is complained about, where it is found to be vexatious or untrue, the well-being or how that person is then, supported subsequently?
Just to clarify, when you say the well-being of the person, do you mean the well-being of the complainant or of the person complained about?
The person complained about.
I would very much hope that action would be taken by officers to identify whether or not a complaint was vexatious at a stage before the person complained of was even made aware of it. That may not have happened always, of course, and yes, I mean the council is very strong on staff well-being, so there would certainly be support mechanisms in place, both for the person complained about and I think the complainant, because we have to ask why have they done that.
Are you happy with that response?
No, thank you very much.
Perfect. Okay, David Franks, go on. Go ahead.
Clearly, if a vexatious complaint is made, the manager of the department must surely understand that there is a relationship problem and that needs to be sorted. Because given the way the council is operating these days, almost with such drastically reduced resources and therefore reduced staff, no department can effectively carry out its responsibilities with serious relationship difficulties amongst its staff and managers. So clearly there's a responsibility for the manager to sort that out.
Yeah? Okay. Right, and with that, let me go back and reread the recommendation. We will move on. Sorry?
Note the report, I think.
Yeah, I think it's just to note the report. There we go. Oh yeah, the committee is recommended to note the report, so we're happy to note the report. Yeah, and we'll move on. So, work programme.
Yes, Chair. So members can find the work programme for the next meeting on the 18th of February on page 38. Is there anything that anyone would like to add?
Mark.
If I can just comment on the item that I have put on the agenda for the next meeting, Chair. It is regrettable that the terms of office of Mr Jones, Mr Maslin and Mr Bullock come to an end in July 2025. There's not another meeting of this committee between February and then. So I will be asking for delegation of authority by the committee to the chair to appoint the either continuing or replacement independent members and to agree to set up an appointments panel and to go out to recruitment at the appropriate time. So that's the That's the purpose of that item.
Okay, so at present, alongside the work programme, that is the only item we have on that agenda. Is there anything anyone likes to raise at this point? Are we happy to? Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Chair. On that last point that Mark has raised, can I put in a request?
Yes.
And that is that those of us whose term finishes then are aware of when the recruitment process is starting. Because I've certainly had this before where we are unaware because it's been advertised locally. I'm not quite sure why, but it would be much appreciated.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I can assure the independent members that that will be done.
Okay. So, Councillor Franks.
Yeah, I hesitate to ask the question because it's almost as though we're dealing with the issue now rather than waiting until the next meeting. But it would be helpful to be told that the appointments, having been made under delegated powers by the chair, would then be reported in the usual way to full council.
Oh yes, absolutely, Chair. They can only be approved by full council. The appointment will be a recommendation to full council by the chair.
Okay, so does anyone have any thoughts on any further items they'd like to raise now that should be on the work programme? Paula.
Yeah, I was just thinking that in the last 12 months we've slightly amended the kind of code of conduct following
Yes.
the LGA. You know, we went through that process. Just wondering, is it worthwhile just seeing if there's any feedback on any, you know, has there been any feedback on the changes, or has it caused any interruption or anything like that? Just, is it worth considering?
I think that's a really good point, but has it been long enough for that to...
Well, I can comment on
Maybe
that now,
changes.
Chair, because of course I consulted on the proposal to amend the code of conduct before it was approved, and there was a very positive response from those members who did respond. I'm pleased to say that I've not had to use the code of conduct since the new one was adopted, so I can't really comment on its effectiveness yet, but I hope that simply being written in plain English will help with the administration of any complaints that do come along.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that reminds me, thanks to my colleague for raising it. It is generally accepted as being good practice that the code of conduct should be reviewed. I think it's probably the word annually. So presumably when it's been in operation for around about a year, it would be useful to look at it. That then acts as a reminder for us to actually take any views which might have been expressed either informally, more likely to be informally than formally, as to its efficacy. Thank you.
Yes, so Mark, is that on the agenda to be reviewed at approximately a year?
I would have to say no, Chair, because how can you draw any conclusions as to its efficiency or whether or not it should be changed unless you've actually put it into practice? And without any complaints, and I'm not encouraging members here, it's very difficult for me to test whether or not it's working properly. Having reviewed it after, having changed the code of conduct after many, many years of using the other one, only in last March, I would hope that we could perhaps leave it a little bit longer before we think of making any further changes.
Councillor Franks.
It's normal practice in most of the scrutiny committees that if members think of something that ought to be put on the agenda for a future meeting, if something occurs to them between meetings, they just email the Democratic Services officer and the committee chair. I'm assuming that you'd be happy for any member of this committee to do the same if they think of something that ought to be on a future agenda, simply to email the chair and the monitoring officer.
I would absolutely be happy if anyone comes up with anything between now and, well, there'd have to be time for the report to be prepared, so in the next couple of months, that they would like to see on the agenda, please do email, because it is a ways away, the next meeting. Right, and with that, we're happy to agree the work programme?
Yes,
Perfect. Right, so that draws us to the end of the agenda. So thank you very much for your time. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned at the start, sorry, there were apologies from Councillor Burnett.
Oh.